To understand what's happening now, it's always useful to venture back in time a little bit, which we will do now via the magic of audio soundbites. Greetings, my friends, and welcome. I was so excited to get started, I didn't officially introduce the program. It is the Rush Limbaugh program here, the EIB network. Now, 27 million as the audience continues to expand by leaps and bounds. Telephone number 800-282-2882. Audio soundbite 4, and in order, this is Charlie Rose and Al Sharpton last night on Charlie Rose's PBS show, and this is their discussion about getting rid of the Jefferson Memorial.
Thomas Jefferson had slaves.
Had slaves and children with the slaves.
Exactly. Should they take down the Jefferson Memorial?
I think that people need to understand when people that were enslaved and robbed of even the right to marry and had forced sex with their slave masters. This is personal. This is not some kind of removed discussion from us. Our families were victims of this. Public monuments are supported by public funds. You're asking me to subsidize the insult of my family.
Thomas Jefferson had slaves.
And I would repeat that the public should not be paying to uphold somebody who has had that kind of background.
Way to go. Charlie, who are you trying to impress here? Why do you even need it on this show? You don't even need to be there. Just turn the segment over to Al Sharpton, tell him he's got a minute, and then reclaim your show. Charlie, what the hell is going on here? To allow this kind of tripe, unchallenged, and not even make Sharpton explain this lunacy that he's talking about here? Remember, folks, we can't change what happened. Getting rid of the Jefferson Memorial. Thomas Jefferson was one of the founders of this country. And you see what this really is about here. This is about, it's not just delegitimizing Donald Trump, and it's not just about getting rid of him. These people are on a tear to delegitimize this entire country as part of their effort to transform it and, dare I say, overthrow it, however they might try to make that happen. But it is absurd. And during all of this, what I notice is that people on our side of the aisle, we kind of chuckle. Ha, ha, ha. Listen to Reverend Sharpton. He's off on another wild tangent. And nobody stands up and responds to this stuff in any kind of way in the public square that defends it. And it's as though if we let the kids have their say and get it out of their system, it'll eventually go away. I think we have learned that this isn't going to go away. These are people that cannot be mollified. These people are going to have to be defeated, folks. And I think that's what a lot of people don't have a stomach for. I mean, the idea of tearing down the Jefferson, this stupid reasoning that Sharpton comes up with, that he somehow has some personal involvement in what Thomas Jefferson did. He's got some personal stake. His offense, his life has been negatively influenced because of Thomas Jefferson. And these people don't even take the time to explain the contributions of Thomas Jefferson and the other founders in creating the single greatest place for human beings to reside in the history of this planet. We are all a product of our times. But even with slavery, if you go back, and we've discussed it on this program countless times, the founders knew that it was a deep problem. They had a compromise they had to make. Boiling this down to its simplest essence, always dangerous when you do that, I acknowledge, but the people of the original 13 colonies wanted to get out from underneath the boot of the king in England. They wanted to found a nation based on religious liberty and universal liberty. They had to be together to do this. There had to be a union. There had to be a united front organized around the principles of independence, rooted in liberty, religious liberty, and otherwise. Well, that included some of the southern colonies, and slavery came up, And it was a compromise issue in order for the Union to be created. But if you take the time to read some of the founding documents, some of the history, you'll find that many of the founders from the North were very uncomfortable with this. They didn't like it. They weren't crazy about it, didn't want any part of it, but they had to make a compromise for it. Constitution of this country and other founding documents were set up so as to allow amendments and change and accommodations, and that's exactly what happened. And eventually this country eliminated slavery and, in part, went to war to do so, with over 500,000 lives lost. That feat and that achievement and that accomplishment is now ignored, discounted as irrelevant and unreal, because if they acknowledge it, then they have to admit that what they're complaining about was dealt with. And their whole argument resides on the notion that it hasn't changed, that there still is, for all intents and purposes, slavery. There still is racism. There still is bigotry. And now it's been joined by a bunch of Nazis and Klan members. And the Klan was all Democrats. And the segregationists in the South were all Democrats. And I'd like to ask a question about this. For those of you on the left, you want to tear down the statues of Robert E. Lee, and you want to tear down now the Jefferson Memorial if you're Al Sharpton, but you want to get rid of all of these monuments that have been erected to people and events in our nation's past tied to the Civil War, which you find horribly, horribly offensive, and you want to get rid of all vestiges. Well, at what point are you going to realize that you also have to disband the Democrat Party? If you're going to really succeed and follow through to the end on this mission, you've got to get rid of the Democrat Party, and you have got to wipe a bunch of people out of it. You got to get rid of J. William Fulbright. You got to get rid of all those Southern governors. You got to get rid of all those Southern police chiefs. You've got to tear down every highway in West Virginia named after Robert Byrd and rename it because he was a Grand Kleagle in the Ku Klux Klan. So just how far are you leftists prepared to go here in carrying out your cleansing mission to eliminate all reminders of our horrid racist path? And then after you do this, could you please tell me how the lives of all of you people are going to magically be improved? Could you explain to me how at that fateful day, when you have eliminated every monument, you have changed every name of a building and highway, and there's hundreds of them named after Robert Byrd in West Virginia alone, after you have thrown Bull Connor and J. William Fulbright and Al Gore's dad out of the Democrat Party, and then, to be intellectually pure, you have to admit the Democrat Party from the founding days of the country were the people that did this. And yet they are your party today. That's where you vote. So at some point, are you going to have to eliminate the Democrat Party? And if you do, if you cleanse all of these uncomfortable and painful reminders, the statues are down, the roads are renamed, all of these monuments are gone, how is your life on that day made better? How is your standard of living impacted? How is your overall degree of happiness measured? And I guarantee you they haven't thought this far, because that's not what any of this is about. We're dealing hip deep with an unhinged irrationality that has the full-fledged support of the American media, which remains the organizing power today that projects the power of the American and the worldwide left.